This episode is brought to you by Bleacher Report. How do you follow sports? From college football to the NBA, Bleacher Report brings you the latest news, live scores, and epic highlights from your favorite leagues, teams, and athletes, all in one app. Dive into exclusive shows hosted by your favorite athletes and original Bleacher Report series with breaking news, rumors, and predictions all season long. Download Bleacher Report to personalize your coverage.
Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
70,000 people are here, and Bob Dylan is the reason for it.
Inspired by the true story.
For anyone who's going to hold your attention on a stage, you have to kind of be a freak.
Are you a freak?
Hope so.
And starring Timothée Chalamet as Bob Dylan. He defied everyone.
Turn it down!
Play loud!
To change everything.
Make some noise, BD.
Timothée Chalamet, Edward Norton, Elle Fanning, Monica Barbaro. A complete unknown. Only in theaters Christmas Day. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.
With Uber Reserve, you can book your Uber ride in advance. 90 days in advance. Perfect for all you forward thinkers and planning gurus. Reserve your Uber ride up to 90 days in advance. Uber Reserve. See Uber app for details.
Hey there, Duke fans. Episode 676 of the DBR podcast. Coming up today, Duke Basketball Roundup. We have a Christmas gift for you, a special interview that we're about to get to in one moment. Hasn't been a lot of Duke news for you thus far, so we'll be bringing you more content once there's some Duke news, maybe after Christmas. But until then, I am Jason. Joining me, as always, is my buddy Donald Wine. Donald, where are you these days?
I am in Texas for the holidays, and I'll be back in DC later on this week, but getting some, not necessarily downtime because I have to work all week at C'est La Vie, but that's life as an adult in the NFL. But yeah, I'm here for Texas for Christmas, and Duke is doing great. And I'm glad about this guest that we have because it's a friend of the pod and a voice that everyone should be familiar with if they're a Duke fan.
Yeah, exactly. When we interview former players, sometimes maybe you haven't heard them that often, but here is a guy that you've heard a lot of. Joining us is former Duke basketball player, former host of the Brotherhood podcast, Ryan Young. Ryan, how's it going, buddy?
What's up, y'all? Excited to be here. Happy holidays. I'm excited today. I'm actually in Florida right now. I'm from Jersey originally, but my parents have since relocated to South Florida, just north of Fort Lauderdale. So excited to be here, talk some Duke hoops as a retiree and fellow adult, finally.
Fellow adult, oh my God. Okay, so dude, let's start with this. Update everybody what you've been doing since you graduated from Fuqua, got your MBA while also playing basketball. By the way, if I can, just really quick, unbelievable. I don't know how you did that. Wow.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, it was a great 2 years on and off the court at Duke for me and within the Fuqua School of Business. Yeah, the season wrapped up last year, lost in, beginning of April in the Elite Eight. I was not entirely sure what my next step was going to be. I'd been putting it off. I had been having a couple of conversations with Coach Shire before and during the year about, what was going to be next. And his biggest advice was, this is your last year of college basketball. Throw yourself into it. Which was certainly the right move. And come the following months after the season ended, I had a lot of conversations with people around in my life, asking a lot of questions about, what it might look like on the basketball side of things if I pursued a professional career and what it might look like if I didn't. Eventually, I finally decided against continuing to play. So I hung up the jersey and I started about 4 or 5 months ago in consulting and management consulting at Boston Consulting Group. Was able to get my foot in the door through a couple of Fuqua connections, actually, to an office they had just built pretty recently in Raleigh-Durham. And the office is actually in Durham. So I walk to work every day. I stay local, get over to the gym to play pickup when I can on the weekends. The hours are they're not incredible at this age at a big consulting firm, so I'm not able to play too much. But so far it's been awesome. Generalist, so working in a number of different fields and different projects, which has been really cool as somebody that, being a student athlete, wasn't able to have your typical summer internships and full internships into what work would look like. So certainly a fish out of water in that lens, but overall it's been an incredible experience. Enjoy the work. The transition to working life has been a hurdle. There's a lot of things that have come up that I'm starting to realize just how, I knew it in the moment, but maybe not to the extent of how pampered we were as Duke basketball players. And prior to that, my experience, Northwestern basketball players. I had to go and buy contacts for the first time a couple months ago. Those are not cheap. And, for 6 years of my life, they just showed up in my locker, a couple weeks before I ran out of them. Things like scheduling dentist appointments. It's all, adult life is hitting hard. But overall, it's been an incredible experience. And then like I said, I stayed local, so able to go back and watch games, which there's certainly a part of me that, is sad not to be a player anymore and miss it, of course. But on the alternate view, it's been very fun to go back as a fan. I was a guy that used to get super anxious and, nervous for games and feel a lot of pressure and intensity, especially being in Cameron. And being locked in, even if for winning, it's in a good experience, it's still, you're riled up and emotional. So it's been fun to kind of just go back and view it as a fan, see a lot of the traditions. I never was able to hear anything when I was playing. So, be able to listen to what the student section is saying. You'll hear the alma mater after games. I had no idea that happened. The stuff that goes on at halftime, again, I was always in the locker room. So it's been really cool to go back and be able to be local, go back to some games. Speaking of halftime, I went back and shot the free throw for charity for the game against Incarnate Word, which was...
We saw that. It was on the broadcast. So,
That was the most nervous I have been in Cameron probably since the UNC games. That was... I hadn't touched the ball in a couple of weeks. I had a group from work there, some coworkers. And obviously it's not, there's a lot of pressure. There's representatives from the Children's Hospital there. So it's, that was the...
Is there like a kid laying in a bed and they're like, this kid gets...
They have children there. And we one of the coolest experience about being a Duke basketball player is they're probably doing it somewhat around this week, maybe when they get back, but for Christmas every year and, sporadic times throughout the course of the year, you go over and hang out with some kids at the Children's Hospital, especially during the holidays. So we had formed a really good relationship with them. But yeah, the pressure, it's a little higher when they do have children there that are there and they're excited to see you. And obviously the crowd gets into it, when there's money at stake to go to these kids. So that was obviously it's super cool to be a part of. And I made it, which I was happy about, but the legs were shaking a little as I was shooting that one.
All the stuff you were mentioning about dentist appointments and paying rent, things like that. That's why we tell people never graduate. So welcome to life as an adult. But I got a question for you. You kind of have a very untraditional collegiate path. And I think a lot of your fellow teammates do as well because of this thing called COVID, because of the portal, because of all these things that kind of opened up after you matriculated to Northwestern. How has your career path changed when you walked into Northwestern as a freshman? I'm sure you weren't thinking that you were going to be ending with a degree from Fuqua at Duke University, but how did that kind of shape where you are right now in your life?
Yeah, it's something I think about pretty often because it was such a drastic change. And if I was, if COVID didn't happen, I would have just graduated normally after 4 years, of probably 5, I guess, because I redshirted prior to COVID anyway. But would have graduated and started work, maybe try to continue playing. I don't know, but it's been incredible to be able to now have 2 networks, and all of the people, both teammates, coaches, fans, you guys here, that, I've been able to meet and become close with, at Duke has just been incredible. I went back to, the Duke Northwestern football game this year and watching in person with a couple buddies. And that was it's a really cool experience. And it's something that, again, like you said, could never have predicted would happen. And I feel like I have a really good relationship with both programs and still have lifelong friends that are, teammates and mentors and from coaches at both programs. So it's really opened, a whole new world for me, both as a player and professionally, and I'm sure it will continue to do so. At the same time, I'm sure playing 2 more years, unfortunately, took a spot from some talented high school kid, but that's just kind of how it happened in the college sports landscape for a couple of years. But for me, yeah, it's been really cool to have opened up a whole new world and another incredible school with an incredible basketball program.
Hey, let's talk really quickly about one of the things that you contributed off the court, which was, of course, the Brotherhood podcast. I feel like I'm trying to remember whether it was the last time you were on the show or the last time you and I talked, that you spoke a little bit about, this was an idea and you went to the program and spoke to them about it, and they really embraced it. How do you feel, as a consumer of it as opposed to the host of it at this point?
Yeah, it's fun. It's awesome. And I think Caleb's doing an incredible job. He's fun to listen to. We had a couple conversations when Caleb was first considering it, and it was a conversation that we were talking about internally. Again, it was somewhat of a brainchild of mine that I went to our media team with and brought to them. And then from there, it kind of took off, but we weren't sure what this year was going to look like. And, it's a lot to try and ask a player to do that. But Caleb kind of came to us and was like, hey, I think, I would be somewhat interested in this. And we had a couple of conversations around it. And one of the things that I tried to emphasize to him the most was, make this your own. He had a bunch of questions about all the work that you have to put into it and the questions that you come up with. And I said, man, you're going to be the point guard of Duke basketball. You're in it. You make this however you want to make it. People will listen to you because you're yourself. And I think he's done an incredible job of that, of being himself and letting that personality come to light. And they've continued, as you guys know, of getting really impressive guests on this podcast. I just saw CB Claiborne was on it this past week, which is a bummer that I was not able to have that conversation. Selfishly, that's what I miss the most about it. And obviously, I'm a yapper. I love to talk about basketball, so I miss just having those conversations. But the premise of creating that podcast was to be able to give back to fans and give this inside look into the program. Selfishly for me, I got to meet some really impressive dudes and people that have a huge impact on the program, but also basketball and the world in general. So I think about some of the conversations I had with, the Grant Hills and the Shane Battiers of the world. I think we just had Grant Hill on the podcast actually, but those kind of guys are that I don't have that opportunity to sit down and have a 45-minute conversation where I pick their brain about everything ever anymore. So I do selfishly miss having that opportunity, but I think Caleb's been doing an incredible job. It's also really cool to have a young black man host. I think he's, for the program and for the brand, he's able to reach a different demographic of kids and people that might not resonate with a corny white guy like me as much. So it's been cool to see him make it his own, add his own personality, and I'm excited to see where he continues to take it from here. I'll also shout out the media team behind it. The Brotherhood podcast are absolutely top of the industry, incredible at what they do. So Caleb's got a impressive team behind him that are the best of the best.
We need to figure out a way, Jason, to get that team on our team so that maybe some people can see our faces going forward. But I think they want to see Caleb's a lot more than they want to see ours. But it's been great.
Wait, hey, Donald, don't we have to ask Ryan favorite protein?
Oh, favorite protein is the one thing that everyone likes to do on the Brotherhood podcast. So what's yours?
Favorite protein? It's got consistently probably chicken.
Chicken, yeah.
I would say most versatile.
Yeah. And favorite pro team?
Gosh, I get made fun of a lot for this. I'm from Jersey, and kind of moved around a lot growing up. I was actually born in Montreal, so I'm Canadian. So I never had I never felt a super strong pull to a city, and grew up a LeBron fan more than anything. So I unfortunately have kind of followed him around a team. So I'll go with the Lakers right now. I grew up a New Jersey Nets fan. They moved to Brooklyn. It's been harder to stay super attached to them. A lot of my friends throw a lot of shade. I'm the guy that watches a ton of sports but doesn't have a favorite team, so it's a weird. But I would have to say the Los Angeles Lakers now.
I mean, there's worse teams to follow and worse players to follow than LeBron James. So I think you're doing okay. Yeah, I'm a Pistons fan. We don't do well with the Lakers over here, but we can agree on LeBron. Okay. Speaking of teams, let's shift to this year's Duke team. And of course, you've gotten to get a great look at them so far this year. Just in general, what do you think? How have they been doing?
I think it's been awesome. I've seen a ton of games, obviously in person. I went out to watch a couple of the games. I'm still living with Neil Begovic, who's the 6-year walk-on and the second year of Fuqua as well. But I went, him and Cale Catchings from 2 years prior, and Daniel Begovic, who was a GA, went out to watch the Vegas and the Arizona games. So I've seen a ton of games in person now, and it's been fun. I think these guys are the biggest challenge with Duke basketball and the Kansases and the Kentuckys of the world, maybe less Kansas this year, is getting your young guys and your freshmen to play like seniors as quick as possible, because that's who you need to beat. And it's been fun to see this group. I think that they're excelling in that hurdle that they have to get over when you have such a young team. The aggression that they play on both sides of the floor is astonishing. These guys are obviously, they're long and they're athletic, but just the motor that a ton of these guys play with, and it starts with Cooper, but it's all of them. The way that they set the tone, and they're flying around, which is fun to watch. And it's been fun. I think they're a super mature group. One of the things that I was talking to Neil about recently, I missed the Auburn game, which obviously was a huge one, but I thought that I think they played Louisville right after, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I thought the Louisville win was more impressive in my mind, just because when you have a young team like that, I was thinking watching that first half when Louisville was shooting whatever they were, 70% from three, making everything. I'm sure that place was rocking. It's packed. That felt like a game that the two teams that I was on early in the year lose at Duke. That's a hard dynamic to get over when you have a young group. You go down 10 to 15 early. You're playing against a lot of old guys over on that other side. They're amped up. It's their, I don't know Louisville's schedules like that, but it's one of their bigger ones, or at least early in the year that Jim's probably rocking. It's hard to stay composed, stay connected to the game plan. And I thought it was super impressive seeing them just chip away throughout the whole end of the first half, second half. And I remember coming away from that, watching that game, thinking this team, the maturity level is impressive. That's a really impressive win. So long answer, but I'm excited to see where this team continues to take and support.
No, and I think, like you said, there's been some very big moments so far this year. It's in a loaded schedule. What has surprised you about this team this year? Because I feel like there's a lot of I guess, presumptions about this team entering and how well they could do. But is there anything about this team that has surprised you and how it's occurred so far this year?
Yeah. I think one thing that stands out to me that's been awesome to watch again is the passing and the unselfishness of the group, especially from the young guys. Again, I mentioned it earlier, but one of the things that Duke, Kentucky, all these, the teams that have younger teams can struggle with is you're bringing a lot of guys in that have been really successful. They're big time players. There's a lot of noise behind them. It's hard to throw them all in and expect them to play super unselfish, to play like a vet team and compete against these veteran teams. It's been fun, especially to see guys that take a lot of the shots, Khan and Cooper. There's games where their assists are up there, 5 to 7 to 8 assists. And they continue to make the right play every time, which is really fun to watch. And it's hard to do when you have such a young team of talented guys. That's the reality is when you have a Duke roster where, 7 to 8, 9 guys want to be at the next level as soon as possible. Only realistically, a handful of guys can average the number to do so. So the big challenge is how do you get guys to play the right way where it's the best for Duke basketball? And it's been fun that it seems like the personalities and the guys, the character in this group, which Duke has always had in the time that I've been there. You just have really high level character guys, but it seems like this group it comes naturally to guys like Cooper and Khan and Tyrese been playing well out there. They make the right play every time and make the one more pass, and it seems like they play with such joy together and watching each other succeed, which is it's hard to do when you have mostly 18-year-old kids out there that have a lot of pressure on them individually.
Assist rate is something that Jason and I always look at, and it's been very successful this year. We always feel like that is a nice barometer of how the offense is flowing, and so far it's been very successful this year. When you look at the team, obviously everything hasn't been perfect. And in December, right, we're almost at Christmas, we can identify a couple of things that we can improve on as the year goes so it doesn't become the Achilles heel of this team. What do you think those areas are?
Areas of improvement. I think this one's going to be a little obvious just from watching games, but being able to produce against a team that likes to slow it down, maybe they throw a funky zone at them. We've seen it with I think the 2 games prior to this Christmas break, prior to Georgia Tech. The half court offense, they're still, I think, trying to figure out there, and part of it's just you have so much length out there with Cooper playing on the wing. Come on in there, you have I think they're the tallest team in college basketball again, like we were 2 years ago. That can cause some trouble with spacing offensively. So, and they have a lot of time to figure that out, and Coach Shire's going to be able to get them in an absolute great spot for it. But I think honing in on that half court, slow it down offense, because you'll see some teams that, I don't think any team in the country wants to run with them up and down and make it a fast paced game. So I assume there's gonna be a lot of coaches that are trying to, strategize and say our best opportunity here is to slow them down, make them play slower in the half court. So making that an absolute strength of theirs is probably, in my mind, what they can really do to take it to the next level. But again, it's been fun to watch so far.
Another aspect of this team that I think we've all been excited about has been coming in spurts, but I think a couple of guys have done well in the season is the 3-point shooting. And John Shire has made it, kind of a point of emphasis this year that he wants a team that can shoot a lot of threes and hopefully make a lot of threes. Now, put yourself on this team. We know that you like to dabble from the three. You weren't shooting 100 threes, but you hit it. You shot a couple in your career. How many threes do you think you would shoot, or would you be content with staying in the post?
Of course, it would depend on the role. I remember I took the majority of my threes when I was in more of a starter role at Northwestern. There's nothing harder than coming in and taking a 3-pointer as a backup center in college basketball. That is not
cold. Yeah.
You need to, if you're gonna come in off the bench as a backup center and you're gonna rip a 3 in the first couple minutes you're out there, it's got to go in. So I assume I would stay content in the post. I think I would try and replicate a little bit of what Malik Brown does offensively, and I would try to do my best of what he does defensively. I don't know that I've seen a post defender like him in my day.
It's amazing.
It's hard to explain when you watch, and I've been to a couple practices and things like that, and the analysts in the film room all say the same thing. They've never seen anything like it. It's unreal how many just little deflections he gets. It's impressive to watch. But I assume offensively I would still be assuming a similar role, especially as a backup, most likely again.
I mean, even Malik Brown and Common have taken a couple threes this year, so don't sell yourself short. Don't put yourself in the post 100%.
I have Common's form. I love watching him. He doesn't, he hasn't taken a ton of threes, but he's taking a lot of free throws, and his form looks great there. Even with the glove he wears in his left hand, it looks pure. So it's fun to watch him shoot the ball as well.
All right. Hey, Ryan, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, you are a guy who took advantage of the transfer portal. That's how you got from Northwestern to Duke. We're going to talk about the current state of college basketball, NIL, the portal, all that stuff. Stick with us to the break. We'll be back in just 1 minute.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
Hey, it's Austin James. Yes, I'm living with diabetes, but it doesn't have to define me. Thanks to the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor, I get real-time glucose readings throughout the day. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor is small and easy to wear, giving me the freedom to focus on my life as a parent and a musician. Now this is progress. You can get a free sensor at freestylelibre.us.
Offer available for people who qualify. Visit myfreestyle.us to see all terms and conditions. Certain exclusions apply. Data on file. Abbott Diabetes Care. For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need, have coverage options to protect the things you value most, file a claim right on the State Farm mobile app, and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
This episode is brought to you by AWS. Amazon Q Business is the new generative AI assistant from AWS. Many tasks can make business slow, like wading through mud. Help! Luckily, there's a faster, easier, less messy choice. Amazon Q can securely understand your business data to help you streamline tasks, like summarizing quarterly results or doing complex analyses in no time. Q got this. Learn what Amazon Q Business can do for you at aws.com/learn more.
All right, we're back from the commercial break. Jason and Donald here on the DBR podcast, joined by former Duke basketball center Ryan Young. Ryan, as I promised before we went to break, I want to talk a little bit about stuff that has changed in college basketball over the course of the time you were in the sport, because when you started at Northwestern, none of this stuff existed that is the current just dominant thing happening in the game right now. You took advantage of the transfer portal to come to Duke. But there's some people who now say that the absolute free agency of the portal, with every guy being available to go wherever they want at the end of every year, that it's bad for team building, it's bad for player development, it's bad for fan engagement. What's your perspective on the transfer portal and the way it's being used these days?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's the $1 million question, and I have a pretty unique perspective because, like, actually,
wait, the $1 million question is NIL. We'll get to that in a minute.
It is the $1 million plus question. Yeah, I have a very unique perspective on it because when I came in 2018, 2019, obviously, and I know it was not a thing. The transfer portal was very limited. You expected 90% of your guys to be back. You get all your guys from high school. And then by the time I graduated, obviously just a couple months ago, it was the complete opposite. So I've seen the full transformation. And yeah, I don't know. It's interesting again, because I got everything I wanted out of the transfer portal. I graduated from Northwestern. I came to a school that, what I was looking for was to help a team win and get to the postseason, as well as acquire an MBA off the court. So the transfer portal worked out perfectly, more than anything I could have expected in my experience. However, I think that I am in the absolute maybe 10% of guys that it works out for like that. So college basketball and athletics is certainly in a weird spot. On one hand, I am absolutely a full supporter, and it's great for players to be profiting off of what they bring to these schools. However, in the other direction, it seems like it has swung pretty far in that direction to go into a lot of the areas that you were just mentioning, where it becomes difficult for player development. It's hard to build a program. It's a weird situation. I think coaches do get the short end of the stick with this. It's, just a couple of years ago when I was maybe 2019, I suppose, coaches were recruiting and coaching. And now that has changed to being fundraisers. They're negotiators with agents. They're doing all these different things on top of coaching and recruiting that has put them in a very difficult spot. I do not envy the position of being a college coach right now, for sure. And it's difficult.
I want everyone to understand that we discussed that we're not going to get into specifics of your NIL experience at Duke. There are certain things that happen in Cameron stay in Cameron, but we did want to ask a little bit about, how some of the outside like away from Duke, NIL opportunities work out for you, and how they work in general, the autograph signing, endorsements, that other kind of stuff. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think that's probably most relevant for a lot of Duke players. A lot of our guys come in with a ginormous social media following with, a lot of almost, I assume at this point, every single guy that comes into Duke has an agent and an NIL agent outside of Duke. So I want to say that's probably more relevant than anything else. For me, I didn't have a huge social media presence when I arrived at Duke, so I didn't have a ton of opportunities for things like that. I had an NIL agent that would, help me source a couple social media deals that would be in the range of a couple $100 for a post. So there was nothing ever that really I feel like absolutely. I don't know that I fit into the same mold as a lot of guys that are super profiting off of NIL. I probably honestly took a pay cut to play a 5th and 6th year, as opposed to going to work at a bank or the consulting firm I'm at now in New York or something. Although that's not taking into consideration what the NBA would have cost out of pocket. But it's interesting. It's for these guys like the Jared McCain's of the world, they are legitimately, sourcing serious NIL deals. And my one instance that I did get a cool experience for, and I only did it because Flip wasn't interested, or he had some sort of confliction with scheduling. I was subbed into a 5-person group that attended a kid's birthday party in the western part of North Carolina. And we got a pretty sizable amount for that, a couple grand, but maybe not in the grand scheme of things. But for 3 hours at a birthday party, that was my coolest claim to fame for NIL. And it was only because Flip was busy that day, but it was that was my coolest experience in terms of the autograph signings, endorsements, and things like that.
I mean, I think that sounds pretty cool.
It's nothing to complain about. It was a fun experience. And
how was the cake? That's the real question.
How was the what?
How was the cake?
That was great. It felt good. Let the check after as well. It tastes even better when you're getting paid to eat.
Right.
How can I ask? How old was the kid?
I think it was a 10-year-old birthday party, and it was kind of a whole town thing. There was a number of there was a couple hundred people there, so it was a big
yeah. A lot of fun. That sounds awesome. Look, we've heard a lot about NIL escalating to just crazy levels. Supposedly, AJ Dybantsa is going to be getting more than $5 million to go to BYU. Do you think there needs to be limits, salary caps, transparency? What needs to happen with this? Or are you fine with guys get paid every penny that you can get paid?
Yeah, it's a good question, because there's a lot of guys that I think realize that this is the opportunity for them to make serious money. There's guys, Jeremy's one of them. I was one of them because I didn't have much of a future past college. The Armando Baycott's of the world. I think these guys realize that this is their opportunity to make some cash. They're older. It's going to be harder for them to be super successful in the NBA. This is where they have a real opportunity. To be honest, I don't know why a salary cap. The college basketball and football are operating as professional sports right now. I don't know why they wouldn't be able to transition to that professional model. In my mind, like I said earlier, coaches are essentially right now assuming the role of coaches and front office. So I think it would make sense to have more transparency. It would help colleges and programs, because right now a lot of recruiting goes on where a kid is able to say, this team offered me this coach, I just got off the phone with them, they said that, or this group said that I can make this amount, and you're going off of Twitter numbers and everything like that. So I do think something, the revenue sharing model gets pushed around a lot and talked about, which I think could make sense. Some limits and transparency would just make it a lot easier for these coaches and colleges and athletic offices, I believe. But at the same time, yeah, like we're talking about, it would limit some of these top guys and what they could probably make.
All right. So Ryan Young, the former player and management consultant, let's say that you were in charge of the NCAA and you had the ability to make any change you wanted. The universities would go along with it. The players would go along with it. How would you change the sport of college basketball for the better?
I think, I think it's probably coming sooner than later that players will just start getting paid directly by schools. I think one thing that'll probably come with it that I would implement is 2-year contracts. It's super difficult for coaches, for programs, for me as a senior captain to build a culture and a winning program with how much turnover there is. And again, that's coming from somebody that transferred and it worked out really well for me. I do believe that most, at least half the guys that are transferring have a tougher experience and it doesn't work out in the way that they'd like to. So I think something, and obviously there's negative implications that come with this that would have to be hashed out, but some sort of 2-year, multi-year contract that players sign with schools, I think there'd be a benefit to it. I remember sitting in the locker room after last year after we had lost, and again, this is the comparison to when I was a younger player at Northwestern. The year ended and you had the seniors, you knew you were graduating and leaving, and you had your next class of incoming freshmen and maybe one transfer here and there. And that was the model. The year ended and you said, all right, we'll take our couple of weeks off and be back, and we're going to get back after it in the gym. And I remember this year ending and walking into the locker room the next day and realizing, the question has shifted from, or the conversation has shifted from, we're taking a couple of weeks off, we'll be back here and we're going to get after it, to each player, is able to look in the mirror and talk to their family and think. The question has shifted from that to, why should I stay? Which it has become so much, for better or for worse. And I think it's fantastic that players have the mobility and they get the profit that they've long time deserved. But that is a really hard thing for programs, college athletics, fans to deal with, coaches to deal with, when the norm is now, what's keeping me at this school? What's keeping me here? Why should I stay? And that's just the reality of where it is now. So I think, and there'd be negative implications that we'd have to talk through and figure out, but some sort of multi-year deal, I think, would help us get back to that point. And we could talk about this for hours and hours, but that's the biggest and first thing that comes to mind, just because I remember sitting in that locker room after we had lost NC State and realizing just how much it has shifted to that, and to having a ton of our guys, that's what's going through their heads, which is what's going through every kid's head in every program. And it's just the norm now, and it's nobody's fault, but it is something that I believe needs to be addressed, because it's hard to build a program that way.
Ryan, it's an interesting point that you made, but also, at Northwestern, as I'm sure you're no doubt aware of, like, you had the football players a couple years ago decide to try and unionize. You've had it at other schools across the country where some players on different teams have decided to kind of unionize to basically collectively bargain for some of the things that you would ask for. Do you envision a future where that becomes kind of the norm and some of these things are kind of worked out where, yeah, you might get more NIL money, but it's going to come with a 2 or 3 year mandatory agreement for everybody?
Yeah, and the idea that comes with that's floated around and discussed a lot is the majority of that pay coming on the back end. So if you're promised X amount of money, maybe 70% of it comes after you've concluded your second year or something like that. I think it's coming sooner or later, like I said. I believe something came out. Charlie Baker said something recently about leaning towards just paying players directly as employees. So I believe that what comes with that would be the collective bargaining, once you're essentially a full-time employee, that changes everything. But like I said, they're operating on a professional model right now. It's just in a funky way. So I think it's coming sooner than later.
I got to tell you, man, I love your comment that the coach is now a coach and a GM and the front office. That puts such a fine point on it. And it struck home for me when you said it. So yeah, I bet you wonder why Coach K, Roy Williams, and on, all these guys left the game in the past few years. That's not what they signed up for, and it's a lot of sort of skills that maybe they haven't developed over the course of time. Hey, before you go, man, we have one last question. We do this every time we have someone on. I need your best Jon Scheyer story. You can make me laugh. You can make me be impressed. It is on you, sir. But give me a good story about Jon Scheyer behind the scenes.
Yeah. The last time I was on, I remember that I brought up the Shawshank Redemption story.
Yep.
Which was, I remember that it just happened and it was top of mind because I remember I love the message that he was bringing to the team, but I remember being frustrated that he ruined the movie for about half the guys in the room that hadn't seen it.
That's on them. The movie's been out since '95. So,
yeah, one of the things that I think back on, and this happened early in my career, maybe in like the summer of my first year there. We had come back from break, and we always do the conditioning test throughout the summer. But right when you come back, you do the conditioning test to be able to see, if anybody had come back out of shape or where we were as a group. And we ran a beep test, which entailed running from, I think it's like about one foul line.
Probably free throw to free throw.
It's free throw to the baseline and back, I believe. And the number that every guy had to get was, I think, 40 at the bare minimum. And then we had you have a couple just guys that can run forever that get up in the 60s and 70s. And I think it was either the first time we did it or maybe coming back from a break, and we had a couple of guys not get it. And Scheyer understandably was pissed and the staff was pissed off. And after we left the gym that morning to go to class, word had gotten around that Scheyer ran it himself after and got above 40 and got above some of our guys. And I remember being just really impressed by that initiative, but also, one of the things that I played for Coach Chris Collins at Northwestern for 4 years, loved him as a coach, loved playing for him. But he was your typical coach's age of, I want to say he was mid 40s, maybe low 50s now. So he's not as into the mix of a practice. And I took note of that very quickly, that Coach Scheyer being 34 when he started with us there as a head coach, he can really get in there and still play. And he can do things like play afterwards, get in drills. And this was just at the highest level, like hilarious if a coach should say, like, you guys did not perform well in this conditioner today. I'm going to beat a couple of you in it. And so he just had the managers out there after we had gone to class testing him. And it's not a short conditioning test. It's probably like 25 minutes, but it was a funny picture in my head and probably a lot of the other guys that he had ran it himself and just had like one of the managers timing it for him and doing that. But also at the same time, it sent a strong message, and it really brought everything to light that I maybe hadn't realized at the time, that it's very cool and a unique perspective to have such a young coach that can still make that stuff happen and provide that example that you need to as a head coach.
He's an animal. There's no question about it. Hey, I got to ask you, man, do you think Scheyer could still play? Like, at this level?
Oh, yeah. At this level is interesting. But he could still, yes. I don't know if he's going to be able to do what Con and Cooper do and all these guys do night in and night out. But yeah, he's still playing quite a bit after practice, and I'm sure he could still make it happen out there.
Oh, we've heard some stories about the pickup games he used to have with Nolan Smith, supposedly.
Yeah. I missed out on those for the most part. They still, of course, play for cardio, but I've heard the legends. And prior to that, Chris Collins used to talk about him and Wojo there when they were assistants. So
the two of them.
Playing after practice pickup games against managers and the support staff.
I love it. It's great stuff. Ryan, we appreciate it as always. Get back to your family. Enjoy the holidays. We will have you back on again sometime soon, I'm sure. And it's just been a ton of fun. Thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy holidays.
So our thanks again to Ryan Young. Donald, it's just a fun conversation. So much interesting insight. I'll go to, I think the most interesting thing absolutely was in terms of the team, it was him talking about the way these guys, the motor they have, the way they fly around the floor. Him saying that he said that his Duke teams would have lost that game to Louisville, and how impressed he was with the poise of the young guys who played great. And then the other thing that I just thought, the moment he said where he looked around the locker room at the end of last year and realized that everybody there was asking, why should I stay? Wow. I mean, that's sobering, but it's also incredibly true. I mean, it obviously was borne out by what happened over the summer, but man, I hope he's right, and that we get 2-year contracts or something like that, something to provide a little more stability. I'm all in favor of players getting paid as much as they possibly can. Player movement, yes, I want all these things for the players. They deserve it. They had to toil without it for far too long. But at the same time, I think a 2-year contract with a back-ended payment makes a ton of sense. Good for the players, good for the programs, good for the sport.
And we've seen it, right? Like, we talked about even as far back as when Nigel Pack went to Miami, it was a 2-year deal. And how those deals are structured or what have you. We have it in the NBA where some guys get 1 year, some guys get 5 years, some guys get 3 years, and it all depends on money and length. And some guys want a longer contract for more stability. Some guys want more money on a shorter deal. And I think we might be getting closer to that than the mandatory everybody gets multi-year deals, because it's just going to be where some guys are going to need to move in and out. But I think the idea is finding some structure in the structureless, right? That is the NIL transfer portal landscape. And I'm glad that we had him on, because he has, as he said, a very unique perspective of a guy who walked into college thinking, like he said, he's going to play 4 years at Northwestern and go about the rest of his life. And he ends up with a Fuqua degree, playing 2 years at Duke, and now having this second world that he's in. And really, again, he even think about it, Jason, that was even part of the traditional structure, transferring once, right? He redshirted 1 year, he transferred for his graduate year, he just happened to have 2 of them. So I think it's interesting, his perspective on that and how he views just the whole landscape, because it has changed. Jason, has changed since we've just been talking. So that's how quickly it is. And for him to stay on top of it, and B, have that unique perspective of being a part of it and participating in it in the way that he did, I think is great.
Yeah, a lot of fun. And Ryan is someone who I think, if you're a Duke fan and you don't value the opinion and the contributions of someone like that, I don't know what you're doing. I mean, just a great guy to have around our program. Very lucky he's still in Durham and still interacting with the guys. Clearly roommates with a guy who's still currently on the team. Mm-hmm. He's plugged in. All right, with that, we're going to wrap it up here on the latest edition, the Christmas Eve edition of the DBR podcast.
For the rest of us.
Yeah. I'm Jason Evans. He's Donald Wine. We'll be back at you in just a couple days. Until then, enjoy your holidays, ladies and gentlemen. Here's the Duke Band to play you out and take us home.